Okay, thank you, Brian, and thanks everyone for being here. We're delighted that you're interested in this program. My name is Jeff Agnoli. I work in the Office of Research, specifically in the Research Development Office, and I've had the pleasure of working with the Ideation Workshop and the GROW program this past year. We launched a first round of this program back in March, right after the pandemic began. And we have a lot of experience and a lot of new information to share with you. So thanks for taking time for being here today. My plan is to walk you through some coaching and advice and recommendations and basically how you apply eligibility, those kinds of things. But I really want you to know that it's open-ended, and if you have a question along the way, or if there's something I've said that stirs something in you and you want to ask a question, feel free to interrupt. I'm totally fine with that. I'm sure that we'll be able to accommodate all your questions. So just to kind of get us started, the GROW program, or Growing Research Opportunities, is a new initiative from the Office of Research, and it's primarily designed to position us for excellence in new research areas. The key idea there is new. So we're trying to identify those topics, areas of study that our faculty are interested in, and help you and support you to achieve those new research directions. There are many different programs we plan to offer. The Ideation Workshops is one of many different programs. You'll hear more about that in the coming months, the other opportunities that are around. But in general, this is really to support our faculty and help identify new opportunities. Um, if you're not familiar with an ideation workshop, you could also call it a brainstorming or a micro lab if you're familiar with that term. But these are some of the outcomes of the workshops. We're really looking to help you refine your research questions. We're helping you to build a team. Um, we're helping look for ways to share vocabulary across multiple disciplines. So it is, by definition, an interdisciplinary type experience. And again, looking for those new opportunities to address new problems. Um, some of the outcomes that you'll accomplish by being a part of a workshop is you'll have new sort of positioning strategies for how you might approach a sponsor or a particular funding mechanism. We'll help you build a collaboration agreement. Another word for that is sort of a prenup for scientists and scholars, helping you kind of clarify how you're going to work together, what that's going to look like, what the roles and responsibilities are, how to manage conflict and communication. For ideation workshops, no one is expecting that a team would apply for a proposal, say, like within the first 30 days. This is, we're really talking about a 12 to 24 month runway for teams to get their proposals together. So it's really the first step in kind of crafting a strategy and an approach and trying to figure out what resources you might need both internally and externally at the university, so that you're ready to submit in a 12 to 24 month window. If you're not familiar with facilitation, I've added this slide because we want you to understand some of the benefits of the process. So number one, it is not about content. It's really about process. So the facilitators that will work with you, myself being one of them, are not necessarily versed in your discipline. So we're going to be the person asking questions and trying to clarify our understanding and help the interdisciplinary team that you've put together build some collaboration. It's really going to give your team a chance to focus on the research questions, which ultimately lead to better, more novel, more innovative ideas. We're going to help you explore alternatives, make decisions, prioritize, put an action plan together, and ultimately build team morale. Um, our experience has been so far is that you'll increase your odds and success rate because you'll have a better plan. So a better plan at the very start will lead to a better proposal. We'll make sure that all your attendees feel safe and able to contribute. We'll manage conflicts that come up. Those are absolutely inevitable and expected. We want to encourage as much intellectual diversity and scholarly discussion as possible. And then in the end, you'll walk away with a documented summary. So really, it's really a tremendous experience. And later in the presentation, I'm going to show you some comments from people who've been through the program. The Ideation Workshop program is an application process internally at the university. The way it works is that all PI eligible faculty from all colleges and all areas are eligible to apply. We're looking for a team proposal from 3 to 5 core leaders, and they need to be PI eligible or tenure track faculty from at least 3 distinct disciplines and 2 colleges. So if you have questions about a distinct discipline and all that, you can always ask me. I'm available to consult as you're preparing your proposal, or if you have any questions. We're really looking for teams with either a little prior experience, like they've just started to work together, or no previous collaborations, or an existing team that's looking to add something new, like another discipline, another perspective, another methodology that would take the research in a new direction. So keep in mind that keyword of new. That's going to make your proposal more successful to be chosen for this program. How to apply, we've added a step. It's really a very simple conversation with me on or before December 15th. I want to just hear about your project. I want to make sure it's a good fit for this program, offer you any coaching, clarify your understanding. So we would like you to reach out to us before December 15th. The full proposal, which is just 3 pages, is due on the end of January. So that's January 29th next year. And these list A through E here are the components of that proposal. Pretty straightforward stuff. We want to know what the question is, and I'm going to give you some examples of questions, or the format of those questions are going to be for ideation. We want to know what makes this problem, why is it significant and novel? Why is it something that needs to be addressed? We want to see a list of the faculty involved and their related expertise. So you don't need to provide their CVs or any of that information, just sort of a summary of why they've been invited or chose to participate. We want to know how this collaboration is new and different. And then the last part is if you can identify for us potential external sponsors and or funding mechanisms that you think could support this particular research question. So these criteria are really critical in terms of how the proposal is reviewed. If we showed you the rubric, the scoring rubric, and I'll go through that in a little bit, these are the kinds of things the reviewers are looking for. So the degree to which you can answer these questions will enable you to get a higher score and be more likely chosen for this program. I'm throwing this slide in because I want to emphasize that it's really about a team. And if you're not familiar with this new text that's out, Strategies for Team Science Success, I encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of good advice in there. And this slide just talks about the characteristics of effective teams. So when we're reviewing your proposal, we're looking for things like, does the applicant have a nice mix of team members and complementary disciplines? Is the team leader strong? And the team leadership in this case is not just you, but your teammates, your core team members. Is there sort of a relationship that exists, or is this going to be new? And we just sort of need to understand that. And then environmental or organizational supports is helpful. So that I kind of describe that as sort of center, institute, or any kind of existing structure at the university that might be able to support the team. So think about all those things as you're putting it together. These are actual comments from our reviewers, and just a little bit about the review process. The Office of Research Development Office will do a compliance review. We're just looking for some of the components that we listed earlier to make sure that you're eligible for the program, that you've identified three distinct research areas, at least 2 colleges. But then we have a faculty advisory committee, and we're going to be pulling people in based on the topics that are submitted. So your proposal will be reviewed by someone who's knowledgeable. It's usually a senior faculty member that the Office of Research is already working with, and we'll ask them to provide some insights. But you can see here that strengths that they're looking for were along these lines. It's a clear topic or research question, well-qualified team, and they could see how they could leverage one another's experience. It was considered highly significant or impactful area of research. There's a high likelihood of additional funding, and they're assessing that based on your track record, but also just sort of based on if this is a topic that we think sponsors are interested in, and represents an emerging area for Ohio State. So it should capitalize on our strength, but it should also take us in a new direction. Areas to improve. These are some of the comments that reviewers had from the last cycle. Lacks a compelling rationale for interdisciplinary research. So if you haven't clarified how the interdisciplinary approach is necessary in order to answer this question, you're going to sort of not score well on that criteria. They were looking for a degree of novelty and innovation, so that needs to be described and sort of pulled out for the reviewers. If it's unlikely to get funding success, in other words, it may be a really interesting idea, but the sponsors that you've identified or the particular likelihood of funding isn't clear, they're not going to be interested. If you've missed a discipline that seems obvious to the reviewers, so if you're approaching a problem and it requires a social science solution and you've not included that as one of your teammates, the reviewers are probably going to catch that and ding you on that. And if it's too far along, so if it's a project that is really already into the proposal development stage, in other words, you have a defined team, you have a clear research question, you're already targeting a particular funding mechanism, everything's sort of tied up with a bow, it's probably not the right fit for this program. We're looking for things that are a little more early stage, where the project needs some ideation or some brainstorming or workshopping before we can move on. So keep that in mind. And again, this is why we want you to talk to me, because we can help you see if it's the right fit for the program. This is a couple of testimonial slides from people who've participated. I think it's really helpful for you to see firsthand. So we asked previous team leaders who were chosen for this program, how has the ideation workshop helped your team? So one team said they were better prepared for their conversation with their NSF program officer. In other words, they were able to articulate to the program officer the value of this research direction and why they should fund it. The next one was, what would you want your colleagues to know? Many folks were new to the ideation process as well, so some of you might be in that boat, maybe you've been through it before, but they commented about having an open mind, letting the facilitator guide the team. I think it's really a key point. We didn't know what we didn't know. One of the things ideation will do is open up your perspective about your particular project and your questions, because you're going to be asking it through the eyes of different disciplines. And so you may see things there that you didn't even consider before. So that's really valuable. And then the last one, recommendations. Many teams talked about that the process changed their focus and the ideas, sort of what they wanted to do. And in the end, they felt like they had a better strategy, better approach, a more competitive idea. And that it was best to write the proposal. So they're speaking about a general space to kind of start the ideation and allow the process to refine it. So you don't want to have everything figured out if you're going through the ideation process, is the key message there. Here's another set of comments from another applicant. They talked about that they were further along in their proposal process than they thought. And so that was sort of revolution for them, or an eye opener. In other words, they identified a funding source and we were able to help them focus on the funding requirements. Again, for this ideation program, we really want you to focus on something that's more early stage. So you don't necessarily have to have a specific mechanism in mind. A sponsor would be ideal. They thought it was really valuable to have leaders meet and clarify. So the team itself getting to know one another, clarify the framework, understanding approaches, disciplinary perspectives, engaging with external partners. In some cases, some teams brought in their external partners on day one of the workshop series, and others added them down the road. So maybe the second or third session. So that's up to you, and we can talk about that as well. But I will say, having external partners is a really good idea. So I see, let me answer this last one, and then I'll get to the couple of chat questions that are coming up. Really, it's so important to consider what problems and novel solutions that you want to ideate about. In other words, you have a question, but you're not really sure what solutions are there. So let us help you with the ideation to kind of work through some of that. Always good to identify, to justify whether your partners represent the right team and why those people need to be there. And you can do that because of either prior publications together, experience, or the kind of work that they've done. So you can justify that pretty briefly in the proposal. So let me jump to the couple of chat questions that I've seen just before I go on to the next question. So Cara is asking, would the Office of Research support collaborations that include researchers outside of state? Yes, we would. This ideation program is very much open to internal and external collaborators. So hopefully if I've answered that. And then can you share the example of what were funded last time? Of course, I'll get to that in just a second. Which topics were funded by ideation. So we had 3 topics, and I guess I would say up front before I share the 3 topics, because they were chosen, it was our first run through with this program. They were the best of the 3, and they were what the senior leadership and the Office of Research decided to fund it. So I just think it's important to understand that that may not be the case the next time, and it certainly won't be the case that the same topics would be funded again. It's just how the process works. I mentioned earlier that there's sort of 3 levels of review. There's a compliance review by our team just to make sure you've fulfilled all the requirements. The second is the faculty advisory committee that's looking through your proposal. And again, they have knowledge and experience of your topic, so they're going to be making comments as well. The last step in the process is the senior research leadership in the Office of Research. So this is our vice president and associate VPs, sort of the senior leadership team. They will make the final determination based on the rubrics and scoring that are sent to them. And so they're looking across the institution and they're looking at the proposed ideas and which ones made sense. So the 3 topics we funded for the last cycle, one was in the area of water, and specifically they ended up focusing on emerging contaminants in the water ecosystem and how they're impacting human health. So it's a very specific question requiring an interdisciplinary approach. So there were public health people involved. They had folks from engineering and environmental sciences and ecology. The next one was kind of a new area called quantum biology. So it was a research team of a clinician, sort of a programmer, and a physicist in quantum science. And they were trying to combine quantum technology and its application in genomic analysis. So it was a great topic for ideation, and they were able to kind of put some things together. The last one was, again, a medical area, a biomedical area, and an engineering area. And it was basically point of care devices and diagnostics in the clinic. So specifically, this group was looking at how do we use 3D printing and its associated technology in the clinic setting for patients that need implants. So it's more of a plastic surgery clinical case, and how would we go about using 3D printing and other technologies directly in the clinic setting. So it's an area that, if you're familiar with dentistry, it's an area that's been around for a while. Dentists can produce things for the mouth pretty easily with 3D printing, but it's not necessarily in the traditional plastic surgery sense. So those were the 3 projects. We are absolutely open to everything, so just so everyone knows. Can the team include? Yes, they have to be from other folks, and I'm just seeing my colleague Deborah Hernandez is commenting on that, so I'm going to keep moving. So let's go to how do you generate a question or a research question for the proposal. I have a few examples here that I think is going to help. So if you were to submit a proposal on water sort of generically, that would not be appropriate for ideation. It's much, much too broad. So don't do that. If you decided urban water contamination was your focus, that also would be more of a topic and not really a research question. But if you phrase it as how might we mitigate known causes of urban water contamination, now you have a very well-defined research question. And that's the kind of thing we're looking for in the proposal. In the arts and humanities space, if you just submitted a project about arts, again, too general, arts therapy, that would be more of a topic. But if you said, how can arts therapy be used in traumatic brain injury recovery? Now you're getting to an ideation question. And that by definition is convergent, right? Interdisciplinary. And we think this is a project that actually was funded by our traumatic brain injury group, sort of an internal seed grant program. Another one would be social justice. That's, again, much too broad. It's an area. Public protest would be specific topic. But if you said, how do documenting the now, in other words, what's happening in society, projects for foster social justice engagement, build rich research resources, and develop students' soft and technical skills, you can see where that's getting into more specifics. And, you know, try not to critique these questions. They're just meant as examples. And I think really would help you to think about your project in this context. Another one that we got from that text that I mentioned earlier, the strategies for team science success, is an area of cancer and other factors. So cancer as a topic or an area would be too broad. Cancer risks, again, is too much of a topic. But if we said, how might we explore the cross-disciplinary approaches to behavioral risk factors such as sleep, energy balance, and obesity as they contribute to cancer risk and survivorship? Fantastic. And in this particular text, there's a whole chapter on that particular study. Hundreds and hundreds of research articles have been done by integrating all of those metrics or measures and looking at cancer risk, the relationship between obesity and cancer, and sleep deprivation and energy balance, which is basically too many calories in, not enough calories out. So consider if you're struggling with writing your research question or getting to that convergence idea, check out this text. It's available through the library catalog, and that particular chapter was really very helpful. So let me just pause and see if there are no more questions. So let me keep going. All right. Going to move into some of the common questions that people have had about how to apply. Just to reiterate, you have to have at least 3 faculty from diverse or distinct areas, and it has to represent at least 2 colleges. Students, postdocs, research scientists may also be on the team, but they would be, think of them as complementary to the leadership of the team. So we talked earlier about there's 3 to 5 core team members and then any other folks that you want to include. So there's no maximum to team size. Just to give you an idea, the last round we had teams of 3 to 15. So the teams really ranged in size, and some teams had external collaborators and some didn't. The team membership can change over the course of the workshops. We're offering you 4 90-minute workshops done virtually online. We have all kinds of interesting tools and resources, and the process really does work very well in a virtual environment. And again, all areas of inquiry, every college, every discipline, creative expression is welcome to apply. There's no restrictions on the number or type of proposals. So if you have more than 1 idea, we would welcome that. If you want to sort of stack the deck and submit more than 1, that's fine. And my colleague Deborah reminded folks external collaborators here in chat are permitted. However, the core proposing team must be internal folks, right? So the core team must be Ohio State people. Think of the external folks as outside. A couple other common questions that came up. We supported 3 out of probably, I guess, 12 to 15 from the last cycle. So I'm not sure how many we'll support this time. I think it's based on what gets submitted. We have capacity to support more than 3 this next cycle, but it really is about the quality of the proposals. So the numbers were, we hope that we have lots more apply and higher quality proposals as well. So we'll see. I already talked about the review process. They will be reviewed by at least 3 individuals with knowledge of your topic area. So the coming from the Faculty Advisory Committee. I also said that the RDO will provide a compliance review, and then the final decision is by our research leadership team in the Office of Research. There's no budget for this program other than we will provide all the resources you need to facilitate the team. So we'll provide you with a facilitator and the technical tools to make that happen. There's no exchange of dollars. This is just a service we're providing through the Office of Research, and it's funded by and managed. Teams with little or no previous collaboration. So, how do you measure that, right? What does that look like? So it really refers to the kinds of works that the team has done, either internal or external funding, any kind of publications, whether they've collaborated on those or not. Some team members may have collaborated, some may not. That's okay. We're not looking for people who've been working together for years and years, and they're just submitting a new project, unless it includes a third sort of a new approach, like another discipline or another piece. We're not really available to help write your proposal, but I am here to help coach you and answer questions about the process. So do take me up on that. We will continue to repeat this program. Right now, this will be the second competition in 2020. We won't make decisions till 2021, hopefully in a pretty short turnaround time. But the proposals are due the end of January, so you could probably imagine about 4 to 6 weeks before we would have answers. So sometime in February. This link, go.osu.edu/grow2021, will take you to the detailed proposal submission process, as well as the FAQs. And I will also add this presentation to that site so that you can download it. We'll also email it out to you just in case anybody doesn't get that. So if you've registered for today, you'll get a link to this as well. I'm available to discuss ideas prior to submission. Remember, the internal deadline is December 15th to kind of talk to me. That doesn't mean we need to speak by then. Let's just consider the December 15th, the deadline is to reach out to me and tell me you're planning to apply, and then I'll get back in touch with you so that we can talk about your project. Okay, so let's feel free at this point, that's my last slide. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have questions, or if you want to post a question to chat, I can monitor that. I'd love if someone would like to share their research question, if you're comfortable doing that. We can give you some feedback on this call even, if you're curious about that. So I see one chat question just popped up. Okay, thanks, Michael. One thing I didn't talk about, so while you're thinking of any additional questions, if you need help identifying collaborators, either internally or even externally, let us know that too. Between our team and the Research Development Office, we might be able to help you identify a potential collaborator or disciplinary area. There are many, many ways to find people on this campus, and I realize that that can be a challenge. So if you're thinking you need a social scientist or a design person or someone with expertise in a technical or STEM area, let us know, and we can use our network or even just work through the department chairs to help you find a collaborator. That's a part of this program that we'd like to build on, sort of creating more opportunities for healthy collisions on this campus so that people can kind of find one another and develop some things.